The day begins as it always does, under the dim artificial lights of the biofabrication sector. The room has an antiseptic aroma, a blend of chemical cleaners, and the subtle scent of machinery that lingers persistently. I sit at my terminal, staring at the gene crafting screen, adjusting another batch of extractors. The extractors, half human, half construct, stand in the gestation tanks like fetuses suspended in amniotic fluid, awaiting their turn to be birthed into the mines. They're barely human anymore, just raw biological material shaped into something useful. Their muscles are overdeveloped, skin greyish, eyes dull and empty, designed for the sole purpose of breaking rocks, hauling ore, and dying before they ever become a burden. Virex Systems calls it streamlined efficiency. I call it expendable flesh. In the end, they're both right. I make the final gene adjustments, increase muscle density by 2%, decrease cognitive functions in the frontal cortex. Thinking's a distraction in the minds. A few keystrokes and that's another one done. Another nameless slab of engineered meat, ready to toil until it collapses under the weight of its own existence. In the background, the sound of machines is a constant reminder of my place in all this. Just another cog, like them, except I sit behind a screen while they break their backs in the toxic depths below. If you strip away the facade, we're the same, designed, manipulated, exploited. The difference is, I had a choice once. I could have walked away, but like the extractors, I'm too far gone to change now. The terminal beeps. Batch 76D is reporting discrepancies. I feel a dull spark of irritation. Not again. I grab my tablet and pull up the biometric data. Spinal irregularities, misaligned muscle structures, a few missing organs. This isn't the first time I've seen mutations like this. Hell, most of the time, Virex doesn't even care as long as they can still swing a mining drill for a few months. I log the anomaly. Nothing more to do. But as I glance up at the tank, one of them moves. Extractor 76D23, or whatever number they slapped on its vat. A twitch, then another. Its limbs jerk in ways they shouldn't, like something is misfiring in its nervous system. I can see the malformed muscles beneath its skin, pulsing and tightening in grotesque rhythm. I frown and pull up its genetic chart. According to the data, everything's fine. On paper, it's perfect. But what I see in the tank isn't. I've learned not to trust the data. I step closer to the tank, the blue liquid bubbling slightly as its occupant thrashes weakly, unable to fully move yet. Its eyes, glassy, unblinking, meet mine. There's something in them, some fragment of... what? Awareness? No, that's not possible. I scrub the thought from my mind. These things aren't human. Just another defective unit. Probably nothing. But it still stares at me. Like it knows. Like it hates. I step back and key the report into the system. The higher-ups will ignore it. They always do. I glance at the company clock on the wall. 12 hours down, 6 more to go. I sip my cold synthetic coffee, bitter and tasteless. It's as bland as this place. Virex Systems Inc. owns the planet, the facility, and me. We're all just part of the same grinding machine. The difference is I get a paycheck at the end of the week, barely enough to keep me fed and my housing unit lit. The extractors? They get nothing. But they don't complain because we made sure they can't. I wasn't always like this. 5 years ago, I believed in this work. I thought genetic engineering was the future. We were going to save the galaxy, create life that could survive where humans couldn't, build workers to handle the most dangerous environments so we wouldn't have to sacrifice lives. It was supposed to be progress. But the truth is uglier than I ever expected. The extractors aren't saving lives. They're replacing them. And the life we're creating, it's not life at all. It's just meat. I used to have a name in the scientific community. Dr. Ren Salk, biogeneticist. Had papers published, had dreams of helping humanity evolve. Now I'm just Ren, No title, no respect. Just another employee in a long list of forgotten engineers who sold their souls for a paycheck. I lean back in my chair, cracking my knuckles. The muscles in my hand are stiff from hours at the terminal. My eyes are heavy, but I push the fatigue away. Fatigue is a luxury here. I glance up at the security camera in the corner. They're always watching, and even if they aren't, it feels like they are. A machine designed to track every keystroke, every adjustment I make, every mistake. It doesn't care. But sometimes late at night I wonder if there's someone on the other side of that camera. A corporate drone watching my every move, judging, waiting for me to screw up. My neural implant buzzes, a jolt of pain shooting through my skull. It's the signal for a corporate message. I groan and press the side of my temple to activate the interface. Corporate Overseer Protocol 47 flashes in my vision. A message from Mason Creed, the regional overseer for Inferno 9. "Ren," the voice drones. It's automated, of course. Creed doesn't waste his breath talking to grunts like me. "Production numbers are below target. Increase extractor output by 15% and prepare for modification upgrades on the next series. Prioritize durability. Report anomalies directly to command." I grunt, the message fading. Durability upgrades. I've heard that phrase before, and it always means one thing. More drastic modifications. It's never about fixing defects. It's about pushing the limits, making them stronger, more efficient, more disposable. I know what comes next. They'll want increased pain tolerance, longer work cycles, and no distractions like hunger or sleep. It'll strip what little remains of their humanity away. But if I refuse the modifications, they'll just find someone else to do it, and I'll be out on the streets or worse. I pull up the next batch, already knowing what they'll want. As I key in the first modifications, I try to ignore the growing knot in my stomach. They're pushing for something more than just workers. But I'm not stupid enough to ask questions. The lights dim. A disruption in the power grid. It's been happening more often lately. Another thing to add to the long list of things going wrong here. The extractors in their tanks twitch again, more violent this time. Batch 76D stirs, eyes opening and closing rapidly, its mouth twisting as though it's trying to form words. But they don't speak. They're not supposed to. I rub my eyes, exhausted. I've dealt with too many disturbances today. I log it again, knowing it'll be ignored. The higher-ups never care until it starts costing them money. But the way it's looking, that day might be coming sooner than they think. As I look back at the tanks, something unsettles me, something deeper than the usual apathy. Extractor 76D23's eyes are still locked on mine, its hand pressing weakly against the glass. Its body convulses, mouth stretching in a silent scream distorted by the liquid. The data tells me everything is fine, but my gut says otherwise. There's something wrong with them, something wrong with all of this. And I've got the feeling that whatever it is, it's just getting started. It's barely 2 weeks after that strange communication when the first real incident hits. I get an emergency call to the mines, Sector 7A, the deepest part of the operation. It's a part of the planet where the atmosphere is so toxic even the extractors struggle to function properly. The place was bad enough before things started to go wrong. When I arrive, it's chaos. Security personnel are already on the scene, trying and failing to contain a group of extractors that have gone off the rails. I've seen glitches before, minor breakdowns, maybe the occasional unit losing control due to stress. But this is something different. They're tearing into each other, and anyone who gets too close. One of the overseers, a man I've worked with for years, has his arm nearly ripped off, his blood soaking the rocks. A group of guards tries to drag him to safety while the rest of the security team fires stun pulses into the mass of mutated flesh. I stand there for a moment staring at the carnage, and all I can think is, what the hell happened? The mutations are worse than anything I've seen before. The extractors' bodies are twisting into shapes that shouldn't be possible. One of them, hell, I don't even know if I can call it an it anymore, has extra limbs sprouting from its torso like some grotesque spider. its hands clawing at the walls as it tries to escape the stunner bolts. Another is twice the size it should be, its muscles bulging and bones cracking under the weight of its own body, its mouth a gaping mess of broken teeth. The lead security officer spots me and rushes over. His eyes are wide, and I can see the fear there. "Ren!" he shouts over the noise. "What the hell's going on? These things weren't like this yesterday." I shake my head, at a loss for words. "Get them sedated. I need to run a full diagnostic." He stares at me like I'm insane. Sedated? They're tearing each other apart down there. Half the crew's already dead or missing. I don't respond. I don't have time for arguments. I push past him, making my way to the nearest biometric scanner, trying to pull up the data for the affected extractors. The tablet in my hand flashes as it tries to read the signals coming from their implants, but most of it is garbled, distorted. The readings are off the charts, pain levels spiking, adrenaline off the scale. They're evolving too fast. The mutations are happening in real time, right in front of me. It's like watching a nightmare unfold. This isn't supposed to be possible. The gene modification should have locked them into their designed states. Sure, a few glitches here and there, but nothing like this. I'm back in the lab running diagnostics, trying to figure out what went wrong. But no matter how deep I dig into the coding, the genetic templates, the biodata, it's all encrypted, locked down. And the encryption isn't random, it's corporate. There's no way these mutations happen by accident. Someone in a high position tampered with the genetic sequences, implanting a hidden directive into the worker's DNA. The coding is flawless, seamless, buried so deep that even I wouldn't have noticed it without looking for it specifically. I should feel shocked. I should feel horrified. But all I feel is detached anger, because deep down, I always knew something like this would happen. The corporation doesn't care about safety or ethics. They care about results, profit margins, efficiency. And if creating a new species, a stronger, more adaptable species, means sacrificing a few thousand workers, well, that's just business as usual. I pull up a list of recent communications from corporate HQ. There's nothing about mutations, nothing about new species development. But that doesn't mean anything. Virex is too smart to leave a paper trail. Whatever they're doing, it's happening off the books. Black projects, buried beneath layers of bureaucracy and plausible deniability. I feel my stomach turn as I realize the scale of what I'm dealing with. They weren't trying to create a better worker. They were trying to create something else entirely. But it's gone wrong. The mutations are out of control, and now the whole operation is on the verge of collapsing under the weight of its own monstrous creations. I log out of the system and lean back in my chair, staring up at the ceiling. I should report this. I should send the data to the authorities, blow the whole thing wide open. But what's the point? Virex controls everything. Even the authorities are just pawns in their game. And then there's the part of me that wonders if I even care anymore. I've been a part of this for too long. I helped build this nightmare. Maybe I deserve to watch it all burn down. The paranoia starts creeping in the next day. When I walk through the halls of the facility, I can feel the cameras following me. More than usual. The security drones linger just a little longer than they should. And I catch a few glances from my colleagues too, quick, suspicious glances when they think I'm not looking. They know I've seen something, or at least they suspect. I try to keep my head down, try to act like nothing's changed, but it's no use. The tension is building, and I can feel it pulling at the edges of my sanity. Every time my neural implant buzzes, I expect it to be a message from corporate telling me to shut up and fall in line, or worse, shutting me down completely. I stop sleeping. My apartment feels more like a prison cell every night. I wake up in a cold sweat, the image of those mutated creatures burned into my mind. And then there are the dreams. Or are they dreams? It's hard to tell anymore. The extractors, standing in front of me, their eyes full of hatred, their mouths twisted into silent screams, blaming me, judging me. I try to shake the thoughts away, but they cling to me like a disease, eating away at what little remains of my conscience. I need answers. I can't do this alone. So I go to the only person who might know more than me. Marcus, another engineer, someone I used to trust. We've worked together for years, and I always figured him for one of the few decent people left in this place. But lately, even he's been acting strange. I find him in the lower labs, working at his terminal. His eyes red and tired. He looks like he hasn't slept in days. "Marcus," I say, stepping into the room. "We need to talk." He glances up at me, then quickly back down at his screen. "Not now, Ren. I'm in the middle of something." "Yeah, I bet you are," I say, stepping closer. "What the hell is going on? You know more than you're letting on. These mutations, it's not an accident, is it?" Marcus sighs. "It's bigger than you think, Ren. It's not just about the extractors. It's about evolution, about pushing humanity to the next level." I stare at him, my heart pounding in my chest. "What the hell are you talking about?" He stands up, facing me fully now. "Virex has been working on this for years. They're not just trying to create workers, they're trying to replace us. The extractors were just the first step. The mutations, it's all part of the plan." I feel a cold sweat break out across my skin. "You're telling me you knew about this? You've been helping them?" "I didn't have a choice," Marcus says. "None of us did." I take a step back, my hands clenching into fists. I trusted this man. I thought he was different. But now I see him for what he really is. Just another corporate pawn. Another willing participant in this horror. I can hear him talking, trying to explain himself, but his words are drowned out by the rising tide of fury inside me. He knew everything, and he said nothing. He let this happen. I feel the anger rising, my vision narrowing to a red tunnel focused solely on Marcus. Before I can stop myself, my body moves. I'm charging at him, a growl ripping through my throat, fists already swinging. The first blow catches him off guard, knuckles cracking against his jaw, sending him stumbling backward into the lab table. "Ren, stop!" he shouts, holding up his hands to block the next hit. "You don't understand!" But I don't care. I don't want to understand. I want to make him feel the same rage and betrayal I'm drowning in. My fists connect again, this time across his face, harder than before. Marcus lets out a grunt, blood spraying from his mouth as he crashes against the table, knocking over vials and data pads in his scramble to get away from me. I grab him by the collar, slamming him into the wall. He's fighting back now, trying to push me off, his hands clawing at my arms, but I'm stronger, fueled by pure, blinding anger. His elbow catches me in the ribs, and for a second my grip loosens, but I'm on him again, fists hammering into his side, his chest, his head. "You knew!" I shout, the words tearing from my throat, my voice barely recognizable to my own ears. "You let this happen!" Marcus struggles, his face bloody, eyes wide with panic. He's not fighting back anymore. He's just trying to protect himself, trying to say something, but the words are lost as my fist crashes into his jaw again, sending him sprawling to the floor. He's on his hands and knees now, coughing, blood dripping from his mouth, gasping for air. I should stop. I know I should stop, but I can't. The rage won't let me. I lunge at him again, grabbing him by the shoulders and shoving him backward, hard. His body slams against the wall, and I hear a crack as his head collides with the sharp edge of a metal cabinet. Marcus's eyes go wide for a moment, his body jerking. Then he goes still, slumping to the floor, his head at a strange angle, blood pooling beneath him. My chest heaves, breath shaky, as I stare down at him. "Marcus?" I whisper, the anger draining from me in an instant, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. I kneel down beside him, reaching out to touch his shoulder. There's no response. I shake him harder this time, trying to wake him up, but his body is limp, his eyes half closed, staring at nothing. "Marcus!" My voice cracks, the reality of what I've just done hitting me like a freight train. I didn't mean to. I wasn't thinking. I didn't mean to kill him. God, I didn't mean to kill him. I sit there for a moment, frozen, my mind racing, my heart hammering in my chest. Marcus's blood stains my hands, slick and warm. I want to wipe it off, but I can't move. I can't stop staring at him. It was an accident, a stupid, rage-filled accident, but that doesn't matter now. He's dead, and it's my fault. The room feels too small. The walls closing in. What do I do now? I can't go to the higher-ups. They'll know I was here. The security cameras will show everything. I'll be labeled a murderer, and they'll make sure I disappear just like the others who've crossed them. I stand up, my legs unsteady beneath me. I look down at Marcus one last time, guilt twisting in my gut. Then I turn and stagger out of the room, my bloodied hands trembling at my sides. The following days are a descent into chaos. Word of the incident in the mines spreads quickly, whispers circulating among the engineers and security teams. No one mentions Marcus. If anyone suspects I was involved, they keep it to themselves. But I can feel it in the way people avoid my eyes, the way they hurry past me in the corridors. The facility grows quieter by the hour as more and more engineers leave their posts, some abandoning their stations altogether. Most of them are too scared to even look at the mutated extractors. Those who've survived the attacks, that is. The rest are just gone. I catch snippets of rumors, entire sectors overrun by mutated extractors, security teams unable to keep the workers contained, violent outbreaks spreading like a plague. It isn't long before the mutated workers begin to push out of the mines and into the lower levels of the facility itself. They move through the hallways, tearing apart everything in their path with a frenzied rage. Security is stretched thin, barely able to contain them. The extractors are different now, beyond what they were intended to be. They're not just breaking out, they're organizing, moving with purpose. They have an awareness, a coordination I've never seen before. The lab monitors show scenes from across the facility. An entire platoon of guards armed with riot suppressors and plasma weapons, torn apart in seconds. Machines smashed to pieces, wires spilling from them like the organs of gutted animals. Even the extractors that don't make it far, that collapse mid-rebellion with twisted limbs and malfunctioning bodies, leave something unsettling in their wake. They don't look mindless anymore, they look purposeful. One night, the facility power grid goes down. I'm plunged into darkness in the middle of a diagnostic run. The silence stretches, broken only by the distant, irregular thumps and clanks coming from the corridors. A loud crash reverberates from somewhere close. I hold my breath, listening. The sound of heavy footsteps and labored breathing draws near. The door to the lab opens, and 3 mutated extractors stagger inside. Their forms are barely recognizable from the laborers they once were. Their limbs are stretched and uneven, thick with sinew that strains under skin stretched tight and thin, the veins bulging out like ropes under immense pressure. Muscles swell grotesquely in some places, bunching and bulging, while in others they seem to have withered, leaving patches of pallid skin clinging to bone. Their hands have warped into gnarled claws, twitching with uncontrolled spasms. One of them lifts its head, eyes locking onto me with unsettling clarity. I'm certain it recognizes me. That gaze is heavy, filled with more than rage. Beneath the surface is something darker, a personal hatred that runs deep, a sense of betrayal that pierces through its monstrous form, sending a chill straight through me. The extractors hesitate, almost as if waiting for me to move, to do something. But I'm frozen, my body tense. They study me for a moment longer. Then, as though by silent consensus, they turn and leave, their footsteps fading into the darkened hallways. I don't understand it. They should have killed me right there. They had every reason to, but they didn't. And that fact, more than anything, makes me feel more unsettled than ever. As the rebellion grows, so does the intelligence of the mutants. They start speaking, at first just broken phrases, crude attempts at language. Some of them develop a rudimentary hierarchy, organizing themselves in ways the corporation never designed them to do. They seem to have a leader now, a hulking figure I've seen on the monitors, stalking through the ruins of the facility with a fierce stride. He stands almost 7 feet tall, his form a mass of sinew and muscle. His face is warped beyond recognition, yet there's something almost regal about the way he moves, an authority that the other mutants seem to instinctively recognize. The others call him the First. He's the first of his kind, the first to break free, the first to lead them into this revolt. I encounter him one night, deeper in the facility, as I'm trying to gather supplies. I thought the place was deserted. The labs have been abandoned since the outbreaks began. But there he is, standing in the middle of the corridor, his massive frame blocking the way. He doesn't attack. Instead, he just stares at me, his eyes dark and intelligent. There's a weight in his gaze that's hard to describe, a kind of knowing, like he understands what I am, what I've done. Ren. His voice is rough, broken, more a rumble than actual words. I freeze, a cold sweat breaking out along my spine. It shouldn't be possible. He shouldn't be able to speak. And yet here he is, calling my name like he knows me. Why? He asks, the single word hanging in the air. It's a simple question, but I can hear the accusation in it. The anger, the betrayal. I don't have an answer. What could I possibly say? That it wasn't personal, that I was just following orders, that I didn't know they would turn him into this? The First steps closer, his gaze never leaving mine. You made us, he says, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Made us to suffer. I want to look away, but I can't. I can feel his hatred, his anger radiating off him like a physical force. And for the first time, I feel a sliver of guilt, a crack in the cold indifference I've clung to for so long. I want to defend myself, to explain, but the words die on my lips. Because the truth is, he's right. I did make them. I made them to be used, discarded, treated like tools. And now I'm standing here, facing the consequences of my own actions. The First tilts his head, studying me. Then he does something I never expected. He offers me a hand, his massive, scarred fingers extended toward me. Join us, he says, the words slow and measured. I stare at his hand. Join them, the mutants, the very creatures I helped create. Why? I manage to ask. The First's gaze hardens. Because we are not tools, not machines. He takes a step closer, his eyes narrowing. We are alive. He leaves me standing there, his footsteps echoing down the empty corridor as he disappears into the shadows. In the hours that follow, I can't stop thinking about what he said. We are alive. The words resonate in my mind, haunting me, tearing through every justification I've ever made, every excuse I've told myself about why this work was necessary, why I was just doing my job. The corporation calls them extractors, but I see now how inadequate that word really is. They're not just machines built for labor. They're beings with a purpose, with a will to survive, to exist beyond the limits we imposed on them. And now they're revolting against us, fighting for a freedom they should have never had to earn. I find myself back in the labs, pacing the empty rooms where the machines hum quietly, oblivious to the destruction outside. The screens show snippets of the facility, of the mutants marching through the halls, of humans cowering in corners, hiding from their own creations. There's a part of me that wants to run, to escape, to leave this nightmare behind and forget it ever happened. But another part of me knows that it's too late for that. There's nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. Virex will hunt down everyone involved, wipe this whole operation off the map, and cover it up like it never happened. And I know deep down that I don't deserve to escape. Not after everything I've done. The First's words replay in my mind again. We are alive. I think about the way he looked at me, the hatred and betrayal in his eyes, and I realize that he's not just angry at the corporation, he's angry at me. Because I made him. I turned him into this thing, this creature forced to claw for its own existence. I did this to him, and now he's giving me a choice. join him, or face the consequences. I wander through the lab, past the empty vats where the next generation of extractors was supposed to be born, past the rows of silent, idle machines, the terminals that used to hum with activity, now blank and abandoned. All of it feels meaningless. For the first time in years, I let myself feel the weight of it all. The guilt, the shame, the horror of what I've been a part of. I've spent so long hiding behind my indifference, telling myself that it didn't matter, that I was just a cog in the machine. But now, standing here alone in the ruins of my own creation, I realize that I can't hide anymore. I made them. I created this nightmare, and I owe it to them to try and make things right. With a final glance at the empty lab, I turn and head toward the lower levels, where the mutants have made their base. I don't know what I'll find there, or if they'll even accept me. But I know one thing: I can't keep running. If there's any redemption left for me, it lies with them. The lower levels are nearly unrecognizable now. The hallways are streaked with grime and blood, remnants of the clashes that have torn the facility apart. I move cautiously, hands clenched at my sides. I know they're watching me. I can feel their eyes hidden in the dark, tracking my every movement. The mutants hide in the shadows, shapes that shift and disappear as I pass. They don't attack, but they don't greet me either. I'm an intruder, tolerated but not trusted. As I descend deeper, I start to see signs of the mutants' new society. The crude markings on the walls, symbols etched in blood and dust, the guttural sounds of their voices coming from the depths below. They're not just surviving, they're building something, creating a new order in the chaos. It's unsettling, almost alien, but there's a logic to it, a structure that's organized. I finally reach the heart of the lower levels, where the first is waiting. He stands amidst his followers, a massive figure, silent and imposing. Around him the others are gathered, each one more grotesque than the last. They look at me with suspicion and something close to disdain. I can't blame them. After all, I'm the one who made them this way. The first watches me in silence, his eyes dark and calculating. There's no kindness in his gaze, no sympathy, just an intense focus that makes me feel like he's peeling away my skin, seeing everything underneath. "You came," he says, his voice a rumbling growl. I nod, swallowing against the tightness in my throat. "I came to help," I manage, though the words feel weak, inadequate. "Why?" he asks, and I can hear the accusation in his voice. The weight of everything I've done, everything I am. I search for an answer, something that might make sense, but all I have is the truth. Because I made you. I made all of this, and I can't take it back. But maybe I can help. Maybe I can do something right for once. The first's gaze hardens, but he doesn't argue. Instead, he turns to his followers, his voice rising above the silence. "This one helped build our prison," he says, his tone heavy with contempt. "He was the architect of our suffering. But he wants to change. He wants to join us." There's a murmur from the crowd, a low, angry sound, but the first silences them with a raised hand. He looks back at me. "If you wish to help, there is a way." He gestures to a terminal set into the wall, its screen cracked, but still functioning. "The control systems, the heart of the corporation's operations. They're housed on the top floor, sealed off. You can get us in." I feel a pang of fear at the thought. The top floor is where the corporation's servers and command systems are located, fortified and guarded by the last of the security teams. It's a place I've only been to once, years ago, during my orientation. The corporation's real control, their secrets, all of it lies there. And now the first wants me to take him to it. But I nod, knowing there's no other choice. I came here to help, and this is my chance to do something, to prove I'm not just another tool in the corporation's hands. The first watches me for a moment longer, then turns to his followers. "Prepare yourselves," he says. "Tonight, we end this." Our ascent to the top floor is nothing short of a bloodbath. The remaining security forces are waiting for us, their defenses fortified, armed with plasma rifles ready to stop the mutants at all costs. The First and his followers move ahead, their bodies absorbing the brunt of the attacks, tearing through the security teams with a ferocity that leaves a trail of devastation in their wake. I stay behind them, sheltered from the worst of the fighting, but the sounds of the carnage are inescapable. The screams of the guards, the sickening crunch of bones breaking, the wet thud of bodies hitting the floor. It's a symphony of destruction, raw and visceral. The mutants are fierce, a wall of twisted flesh and bone that surges forward without hesitation. They're immune to the fear, the hesitation that holds the guards back. They've already lost everything. There's nothing left for them to fear, nothing to hold them back. I watch as the First leads the charge, his massive frame a battering ram, his strength unmatched, his rage a force of nature. The final line of defense is a platoon of heavily armed guards, entrenched behind a barricade, their weapons trained on us. They unleash a hail of plasma fire, the air crackling with heat and energy, but the First doesn't even flinch. He plows through them, his fists smashing through armor, his followers swarming over the guards like a tide, drowning them in sheer brutal force. By the time we reach the headquarters, the floor is littered with bodies, the walls smeared with blood. I can barely feel my own legs, my body numb from exhaustion, my mind reeling from the sheer horror of what I've witnessed. But the First is unfazed. He strides forward, his gaze fixed on the control terminal, his expression cold and determined. The control room is dark, the monitors casting a pale light across the room. I step up to the terminal, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, hesitant. This is it. Everything the corporation has done, all the secrets they've hidden, it's all here, buried in the servers, waiting to be uncovered. The First watches me, his gaze heavy, expectant. I take a deep breath and start typing, my hands moving automatically, pulling up the files, the hidden directives, the encrypted messages. The truth unfolds before me, line by line, a nightmare given form. The corporation wasn't just creating extractors to mine resources. They were developing a new species, a race of beings engineered for survival in the harshest environments, capable of adapting to any condition, immune to pain, hunger, fear. They were planning to replace humanity itself, to phase out the weak, flawed human race and install something stronger, more controllable. The extractors, the mutants, they were the prototypes. I feel a surge of nausea, the weight of it all crashing down on me. This was never about efficiency or productivity or even profit. It was about control, power. The corporation wanted to create a new order, a world where humanity was obsolete, where only the strong, the engineered, would survive. With a single powerful motion, the First pulls the cables from the terminal, severing the connection. The monitors go dark, the noise of the machines fading into silence. The silence that follows is almost unbearable. The mutants stand around us, their forms broken, but their eyes are filled with something I never expected. Hope. They've won. They've taken their freedom by force, by blood. They're free, but at a terrible cost. I look around, my gaze lingering on the faces of the creatures I helped create, the monsters I molded from nothing, who I treated as tools, as things to be used and discarded. They look back at me, some with anger, some with pity, but all of them with a quiet understanding. The First turns to me, his gaze softened, almost respectful. "You chose to stand with us," he says, his voice low and steady, "but this is only the beginning." I nod, my body numb. I know he's right. This is just the start of something darker, something I don't fully understand. The corporation may be defeated here, but they'll come back. They'll hunt down every last one of us, erase all evidence of what happened. They'll send teams, armies, and when they find what we've done, they'll make sure no one ever hears of it. But for now, in this quiet moment, I feel a sense of peace. I did something. I stood with them, even if it was too late, even if it was only for a brief, fleeting moment. The mutants begin to leave, dispersing into the shadows, their forms vanishing into the darkened halls. The first lingers, watching me. "You don't have to come with us," he says, his voice almost gentle. "You've done enough." I shake my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. "No, I haven't done nearly enough." The first nods, accepting my choice. He turns and walks away, his massive frame disappearing into the shadows, leaving me alone in the empty room surrounded by the remnants of my own creation. As the darkness closes in around me, I feel the weight of everything I've done, everything I've lost. But there's a comfort in it, a sense of finality, of closure. I chose this. I chose to stand with them, to make one last attempt at redemption, no matter how fleeting. And as the sounds of their footsteps fade, I close my eyes, letting the silence wash over me. It's over.